The secret weapon of many golf pros is not only mental but technical mastery. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some proven strategies that are not only going to elevate your game, but your life as well. And today we have our own very special pro with us today. She's going to be your secret weapon for upping your game and your life. She's been 20 years a fellow of the PGA and started out life at the world famous Belfry Golf Centre. She's been flown all over the world, people needing her skills. And actually, we're very lucky to have her here today. She's just flown in from the States as well. She's been the Academy Director for the PGA in Spain. And she's also a published author. Her book, Golf, More Than Just a Swing, is out now. And I highly recommend you go and get yourself a copy after, of course, you finish listening to this podcast. So for today, I'd like to welcome to Unleash Your Inner Athlete, my very special guest, Nicky Lawrenson. Hello, Nicky. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Julia. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really good to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great because I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about the technical as well as the sort of mental and strategic aspects of the game. But we're going to sort of bring in all that holistic approach where you're bringing in and blending in sort of physical, psychological, emotional, mental, technical all together, and then showing people obviously how that actually moves on and impacts their life as well as their game. So, but before we get into all of that, what I want to do is for our listeners is to find out more about Nicky. How did you get into golf? What sort of drew you to golf to the point where you're so passionate about it and having such success with it now?
So it started a long time ago. It was my dad that got me into playing. He's been playing for years, a long time. And I went out with him one day, carried his bag for him. He played around and I had a couple of shots sort of here and there in between. And that was the start of it, really. That's where I got hooked. Played a lot as a youngster. From that point on, and then in my early 20s, had the opportunity to do my PGA training and turn pro.
It's been a very, very long journey. I mean, you have been literally all over the world.
Yeah, getting on now, Julie. I'm getting on.
We all are. And I know it's what you're teaching, what's unique about you, and I find fascinating is the fact that you blend sort of Far Eastern philosophy almost with modern psychology as well. So that's all come into what it is you teach and how you structure your programs.
Yeah, very much so. I'm very passionate about the holistic approach, and since turning pro in my early 20s, my career has been based predominantly on coaching, and I've been fortunate to spend some time overseas with my coaching, which has been great. But yeah, the holistic approach is really important. I think when I was younger, when I used to play and compete, certainly the mindset side for me certainly threw up some obstacles, and that, I guess, began my journey of sort of trying to understand that element a little bit more at the time to sort of try and help make some changes within my own game. But then as I continued with my coaching career, it was great to sort of understand that side more to help my students with their game and to help them sort of maximize and fulfill their potential.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? Because now you're bringing all these elements, because you've also studied physiotherapy and nutrition and all those parts, which are all important to the body and obviously
Yeah, the physical side. So within golf, there's a great program. The Titleist Performance Institute have a great sort of golf specific fitness program, and I've been fortunate to study on some of their programs and certifications, and that for sure incorporates the physical components as well. So what the body can or can't do, and it's important to help golfers on that side too. The body has to come first. So if there's certain areas from a coaching perspective, if there's areas that we can help the student develop physically, then great. Whether that's from a strength perspective or mobility perspective, then that's great. Also, it's important to know certain limitations. What we don't want to do is force a golfer into certain positions if their body isn't in a position to do so. So the physical fitness is really key. Obviously the nutrition side is important as well. 18 holes of golf is sort of a good 4.5 hours, so it's important to make sure the body is fueled efficiently, and with you know, the good nutrients, so that not only again from an energy perspective, but also from a concentration perspective. So sometimes during the sort of midsection of the back nine of a round of golf is sometimes, if we haven't fueled correctly, where we might start to feel a little bit sluggish, or we might start to feel a bit drained, or we may not make the best sort of course management decisions. So that's important as well. And then obviously the mindset perspective is really key. And I think sometimes, of course, with all sports, but certainly with golf, you know, when you've got that stationary ball there, you've sometimes got that little window of time where, you know, you can either sort of talk yourself into it or out of it. So you know, that stationary ball can sometimes just throw in a few little curveballs now and then. So I think when you put it all together, you know, alongside the technical components, we can't sort of overlook that. You know, the key fundamentals and the foundations of the technique is important. But yes, ideally, when you bring it all together, it's important to look at all of those sort of key elements.
Yeah, I know, because you not only help athletes as well, but you're actually working with all sorts of people, don't you? I mean, I know you've got your business now for women in business. So do you want to explain a little bit about that, what you're doing now, and then we'll get into sort of a bit more of how it all comes together and join all the dots for everyone.
Sure, yes. So again, throughout my career, I've been fortunate to sort of be part of certain corporate golfing environments, and the golf course as a whole is a great place to build relationships, both from a social perspective, but also from a business perspective as well. And it's a great opportunity. It creates a very sort of a very different dynamic. It's a great organic relationship building opportunity out on the golf course. And so I've been really passionate about encouraging and supporting women within business to gain the benefits of those environments, obviously from the health and well-being perspective, but also from the potential sort of relationship building perspective from a business aspect as well. And that's where Women in Golf and Business was born. We've got an online platform, and then we also do various training programs and events. And some of our training programs also combine the elements of the practical coaching side, and then we have some workshops that blend in some of those mindset components that transfer from the golf course into everyday life and into the workplace. So we kind of meld them together for a training program that sort of covers all of those aspects.
Okay, and that's your Women in Business.
That's Women in Golf and Business. Yes. So that's there's
if anyone is interested, head over there. I suggest you book yourself on that course and start getting more relationships going. All very important.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, I mean, I'm really interested in your approach, because I haven't really, I mean, I must admit, I'm not a golf expert myself, but it seems that not many people implement such a holistic approach that you do with all these philosophies and psychology, and I find that really fascinating. So when someone comes to you, and who's a sort of typical person that would come to you? What sort of issues are they struggling with? What are they looking to improve? And how do you start sort of coaching them?
It can be completely across the board, whether it's a complete newcomer to the game or an established golfer. So with regards to golfing ability, it's completely across the board, all ages, and everybody is very individual, really. So everybody has their own specific. If they're an established golfer, they may have a certain area within their game that they're looking to improve on. Very often in touching on the technical elements, there's often sort of a parallel from a mindset perspective that can have an impact on the technical side too. So sometimes how we think and how we feel will impact our physiology, which then in turn can have an impact on our technique, which obviously then has an impact on the result of the shot and the ball flight. So they're very much run parallel alongside each other. So it's always really good to get a sense of really getting to know my students and sometimes their thought process, because sometimes they can be very sort of strongly linked. The mindset and how we think and feel can certainly have an impact from a technical perspective as well, which ultimately then has an impact on performance.
And what generally are people surprising transformations people are experiencing when they've worked with you? I mean, obviously they come to you, they want to improve their game, but
Yes.
what are the surprising benefits that they weren't expecting to receive that have actually made a difference in their life and potentially their business?
I think it's funny, but golf can offer so many great analogies and sort of light bulb moments, and it's a great sort of learning curve. It can provide so many great opportunities for growth, really, and how that can help positively into everyday life and into the workplace. Often with golf, it's a sense of sometimes there's golfers who possibly are particularly hard on themselves. They don't give themselves much sort of room for error. And certainly when I was younger, the sort of the perfectionist side of things was something I thought that's how I would improve as a golfer. If I made everything perfect, that's how I would continue to develop. But ultimately, it was always focusing on the bit that wasn't right or could be better. So it was always kind of filled with that sort of tension and being particularly hard on myself. So for me, that was a big learning curve. I think it's fine to acknowledge areas that can be developed, but in a supportive way, rather than giving yourself a little bit of a hard time about it. And it's that being a little bit more supportive of yourself, recognizing areas of that could be developed, but in a supportive way. When we're particularly hard on ourselves and always focusing on the areas that need fixing or are wrong, and we give ourselves a bit of a hard time about that, it almost sort of keeps us in that quite sort of tense, anxious state. And again, any sort of tension within the golf swing from a technical perspective is going to have a negative impact. So lots of sort of different ways that we can really, it can help us learn positive areas of growth in different areas of our life. And again, with regards to sometimes in golf we think if we sort of try to control the outcome, if we control every element of the golf swing and try and control the outcome of the ball flight, the results will more closely match what we're after. But ultimately, providing the fundamentals are pretty good from a technique perspective, it's more about trusting and letting go than controlling and trying harder. And that can be an interesting one to sort of look to change.
Yeah, it's funny you said that about letting go, because it actually reminds me of another book I read called The Inner Game of Tennis, because as my background is kind of in tennis.
Yeah,
and in that book it talks about self-one and self-two, and how your self-one is the very sort of critical noise in your head, voice in your head, and that perfectionist, and the sort of self-two is the one that just you trust yourself, that you've done all the training, you know what to do, and you just let go and trust yourself to be able to take that shot. And I sort of think of golf as being pretty much technical in the same way tennis is to some aspect, and that you're needing that, like you say, that sense of being able to just trust yourself that you can do the right thing. You've done all the training, you know what is needed of you. You can just let go and enjoy it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And for sure, having the basics of the fundamentals, that can help the process as well. And that's where guidance from a golf pro can help. But certainly once the fundamentals are relatively in place, then it's definitely much more about that sort of sense of, okay, what am I looking to do here? Where's my target? And trusting your own natural ability to allow that to happen. There's a situation on the golf course where if you hit a shot and it goes into trouble, into a hazard, into the trees, and you're not sure that you'll be able to find it, you then hit another shot, and it's called your provisional ball, just in case you don't find the first one. And very often golfers will hit their provisional ball absolutely perfect where they wanted the first one to go, and they're like, why didn't I do that the first time around? And very often it's because the worst case scenario has already happened. They're not focusing on that anymore. It's already happened. So they're not trying to control things to prevent that from happening because it's already happened. They're now focusing on their target, and they're allowing their own natural ability to let that happen because they're not worried about the worst case scenario happening because that's already happened, if that makes sense. And that's why that provisional ball then goes exactly where they wanted the first one to go the first time around. So yes, definitely much more of that sort of target, trust, and enjoy the process.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to perfecting the game, do you find, I mean, we spoke about it beforehand about sort of fear and avoidance and that focus.
Yes.
How much does that play a part in someone's game?
It can play quite a big part in some golfers' game, and very often there tends to be the focus on where we don't want to go or what we're trying to avoid, whether that be not wanting to go in the trees on the right, not wanting to go into the bunker or the water, not wanting to come last in the competition. So very often it tends to be, as you say, that kind of avoidance approach and more of a focus on what we fear as opposed to what we're looking to do. And again, that also comes with the sense of focusing on the enjoyment of the process. When we're focusing on what we fear, very often we're focusing on the outcome and the consequence of the outcome as opposed to enjoying the process. And again, how that can impact things technically, if you're, for example, on the tee and you're focusing on the trees on the right, the main focus obviously is avoiding the trees on the right. So you're going to try and control things to prevent that from happening. So when you're focusing on where you don't want to go, obviously there's going to be tension that creeps in, and then you'll start to move away from where you don't want to go. So that starts to impact things technically, and it starts to put, I won't go into the full details from a technical perspective, but it creates a pattern of movement that encourages the ball to travel more towards the trees, if that makes sense. So where we place our focus on the golf course can definitely have an impact on how we're able to swing the golf club technically. And unfortunately, the shot will then more often closely match the shot that we were worried about happening in the first place or were fearful of. So yeah, where we place our focus is a really important one, and trying as much as you can to stay in that sort of present moment to ensure that you don't start to sort of race ahead of time and think, okay, well, if I do that and then I do that and then I might finish with that, and all of that then starts to create that sort of snowball event. So it's trying to sort of keep that present moment process focus as opposed to sort of racing ahead or fearful of what we're trying to avoid or what we don't want to happen.
Well, I guess it is very similar to life, isn't it? I mean, whether you're in business or any other aspects, we're tending to chase ahead. We're trying to focus on the, like you say, the outcome instead of just enjoying the journey, being in the moment, and just having that future plan, but staying in that moment. So I could see how golf would be a really good way of training your mind to focus on being in the moment and allowing that mind and body connection so you can focus and get that right shot. And that can actually transfer well into other aspects as well, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's many sort of great metaphors of how it can sort of transfer into everyday life, you know, where we place our focus, having that sort of trust in ourselves, and most importantly, enjoying the process. And sometimes as golfers, we wait until the good shots appear before we start to enjoy it. But very often, if we can flip that, and if we can have that sense of enjoyment first, if we can change our state regardless of any sort of external scenarios, when we can control our state first, and when we can sort of have that sense of enjoying the process first, then all the good stuff comes on the back of that, because we'll be relatively tension free. When we're more tension free from a technical perspective, generally we'll put a better golf swing on the shot. and then that's where the good shot starts to appear, and then the momentum builds from there.
Yeah, because I can imagine it. I mean, I assume you must get some people, I guess, who are quite self-critical, as you said, that perfectionist.
Definitely.
Yeah, and as you say, you know, you and me both sort of passionate about the mind-body connection, and how, you know, what you're stressed about, what you're tense about is going to manifest itself in your body, and how that then performs. And you sort of got to clear that mind first from all the negativity and all the blocks and all those challenges before your body can relax and just do what it needs to do. So how do you manage to help someone who just seems to be very critical and not accepting, you know, we make mistakes, we correct it, we move on?
Yes, yeah. I think sometimes it's having an awareness of it as a starting point. I think sometimes we get so used to sort of getting into a habit of that self-critical sort of the conversations that we have within ourselves, that almost becomes the automatic norm. So I think first of all, it's having an awareness of, okay, because our body will always tell us, and you know, as I know you often talk about that mind-body connection, our body will always tell us where we're placing our focus. So if we're placing it somewhere that maybe is not corresponding with what we desire, generally it won't feel great. So anything on the more sort of negative side of things will create a different feeling in our body to when we're focusing on something that feels a little better. And that's the thing, it's not that we have to think the most positive thought out there. It's just finding a thought that feels a little better, that's not quite as self-critical. So it doesn't have to be the most amazingly positive thought, but just something that feels a little bit better, and you'll start to feel that shift physically. And I think that's the start, just the awareness of, okay, how does that thought make me feel? Where is my focus? Can I create a shift that feels a little bit better and that might be a little bit more beneficial? And that then starts shifting the momentum in a different direction. So yeah, I think the first key thing is sort of having the awareness of you know, where is our focus, and can we shift that slightly in a way that feels a little better and is a little bit more beneficial for us. Because I think, yeah, oftentimes it's kind of the go-to default just to be that sort of critical, have that critical self-talk. And yeah, I think, you know, sometimes it's just a case of even going out, you know, sometimes we go out on the golf course and we work on things, or we go onto the driving range and we work on things technically. We try and change things technically with our golf swing, but we don't actually sometimes head out onto the golf course and try and have a shift in our thought process. So sometimes it's just going out on the golf course and going out for 9 holes. And if we catch ourselves being a little bit more critical, catch ourselves in the moment and just shift that into being a little bit more supportive, in the same way that you would be supportive of your playing partner, a friend that's joined you for a round of golf, a young junior golfer, you know, starting out on their journey, just in the same way that you'd be supportive of them, to be that same supportive way to yourself, and just start to practice that a little bit more. So that starts to feel a little bit more of that sort of natural go-to, as opposed to that sort of critical self-talk.
Yeah, I mean, as well, you know, we talked earlier about your sort of Eastern philosophies as well. So how does that play a part? I mean, does that come in a sense of spirituality that comes into the game? Is there much of that in the coaching and the playing of golf?
I think there's lots of great sort of philosophies. I think the neuroscience side of things is massively fascinating, and it's great to understand sometimes the science behind how things work. So I find that fascinating. But certainly, yes, the Eastern philosophies and that sort of the more spiritual side, I think that's key as well. And, you know, whether that's from a mindfulness perspective, the meditation side, and again, even if it's in the form of starting to become a little bit more aware and a little bit more mindful of how we're feeling in that moment, where our focus is, even that sort of an element of that mindfulness is sort of key and can start to help shift things a little bit more into a positive direction.
So, okay, so if someone's starting out, they want to come to you because they want to sort their head out, they want to make sure that they're sort of focusing in everyday life and being able to be relaxed as well, and they think that they feel that golf is that sort of caveat to a better life. I mean, what would you recommend that they do first of all? Is it do they need to be more focusing first on the mind and then getting into the technical aspects of the game? What is it you would recommend that someone starts out to do?
I think it's great that they work parallel to each other. I think obviously it helps from the outset to get a feel for the basic fundamentals. So how you stand to the ball, how you hold the club, your grip, your posture. So, you know, it certainly helps to get those good fundamentals in place with some guidance. So that's key. And then for sure, alongside that, you know, the mindset side, it's applicable to all levels of golfer, whether it's somebody who's sort of first picking up a golf club for the first time, or somebody who's been playing for years and is an established golfer. That element is still sort of applicable across the board. So I think when you're first starting out, it's great to kind of have that sort of two-pronged approach, as they both complement each other and work together.
So what would you recommend as well? So if we go by sort of going into more technical aspects of improving your game, what are your sort of top sort of 5 points that maybe you would say you would need to perfect, and how would you perfect them?
Okay. So I would.
That's not too awkward a question.
No, that's okay. I would certainly reiterate there about the fundamentals. So I guess the same with many things in life. Again, another metaphor. Having good foundations helps the process. So I would say, if there was one thing for a newcomer, a sort of key bit of advice for a newcomer to the game, is to seek some professional guidance. With regards to golf, there's some great information out there. I think the beauty of the internet is that there's lots of information available across the board, whether that's YouTube, whether that's through an article. The only thing is that can feel sometimes a little bit of a sort of a minefield and be a bit confusing. So I think seeking professional guidance is key, and just to get the feel for the fundamentals would be a good start. I think it's important to also build in elements of the short game. A lot of times we sort of focus on the distance and hitting the ball a long way, which is great and feels really good to do that. But ultimately, it's those short shots in and around the green, and those are the shots that are going to help us from a score perspective. So I think it's important to spend just as much time on the short game. So building in the fundamentals from a setup perspective, and to start the process of building your swing, focus on the short game just as much. Seek professional guidance to help you on your way. I think it's great as well, coaching wise, you can either have one-to-one coaching or you can have group coaching, and group coaching offers the opportunity to meet fellow golfers, because I think the social aspect is really important too. And that's a key part of the process, because ultimately the most important reason for being out there is to enjoy yourself and enjoy the game, and sometimes that's great to do that with other people. So if you are starting out, then obviously joining a group coaching course can also be beneficial for that. And then I guess from there, just starting to feel as though you're heading out there and doing things fairly gradually. If you're a newcomer, don't feel as though you've got to get everything spot on all at once. Again, be patient with yourself, be patient with the process. There's plenty of time. Don't feel as though you have to get everything cracked all at once. And most importantly, to enjoy it. That has to be the most important element to it all. Yeah, all the good stuff happens on the back of enjoying it.
Yeah. So tell me, let's go into a little bit about your book as well.
Yes.
Golf, not just more than just a swing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
go into a little bit detail on what inspired the book and, you know, how that helps.
Sure. I think gradually over time, I've been sort of compiling various articles, and it was during lockdown actually that, and I thought about sort of bringing it all together and possibly putting it together as a book. And lockdown gave me the prime opportunity. I had no excuse not to kind of get stuck into it and get it finished. So that's where I completed it. And it's the first half, it's more so about my sort of observations throughout my coaching career. It's not specifically a how-to as such from a technical perspective. So the first half is a little bit more sort of my observations from a coaching side, and then the second half is a little bit more on the mindset, and that's a mixture of elements ranging from focus to perfectionism, breathing, and how that can impact things from a technical perspective as well. So quite a mixture of elements within the second half, but predominantly on the mindset side.
So really, just to conclude, if we gave an overview of everything relating to golf and life, I mean, the takeaways for me is, first of all, you know, getting your focus, getting mentally calm and trusting in the process, as it were. Don't listen too much to the mind. Don't be too critical, because that sort of feeds into the body. You're sort of going to tense up. You're not going to take the shot as accurately as maybe you could. Sort of be accepting of the process and enjoy it and relax. But also you've got to take in and train yourself into sort of more technical aspects, as it were, and get the right coaching. If you're really serious about your game, if you really, you know, being more competitive is important to you, then that's just as important. But also all those things you're learning during that training, during that coaching, is playing that game and improving your game, working with other people, different levels, different technical skills, as it were, really does give you a sort of a great foundation to take in to other areas of your life. I've always said that, you know, sports people make very good business people, and business people play a lot of sport and take part in fitness and health orientated activities. So for me, that's the takeaway for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think lots of sort of great learning curves and metaphors that sport and golf can sort of transfer into everyday life and the workplace, for sure, definitely. And for me, throughout my sort of golfing career, I would say it's definitely given me lots of learning curves, which I'm appreciative of. And I think, yeah, it's quite special in that respect. And it's just, I think for sure that, you know, the technical side, what I would say as well is that when you're keen to develop your game, I think sometimes as well, it's just getting a sense of when and where you work on those technical elements. So in the most ideal world, when you're out on the golf course, again, it wants to be much more of that target orientated process, as opposed to thinking too much about how we're trying to make that shot happen, or thinking about certain positions of the golf swing. There's got to be an element of sort of natural flow to it. So when we're out on the golf course, it does want to be more of that target orientated process. If we're looking to develop our game from a technical perspective, then potentially we spend a little bit more time on the driving range or the practice area. We've got some guidance that, you know, gives us, we know we're happy with what we need to focus on. We've got a simplified understanding of what we need to work on, and that's important as well. When we have a simplified understanding of what we need to work on technically, we're less tempted to experiment and try different sort of things, that whether that's on YouTube, and not to say that information on YouTube is incorrect, it's just that particular piece of information may not be, you know, applicable to our own particular pattern of movement. So the more we try and experiment with different things, the more of a frustrating loop we can find ourselves in. So it's having some personalized guidance that gives us a simplified understanding of what we need to work on our own particular pattern of movement, and then creating the right environment to work on that. When we're practicing on a driving range, we've got another go. So we're going to trust the new feeling more when we've got another go. When we're on the golf course, if we're trying a new feeling, we want to trust the old feeling. So the brain knows what it's got to do, but it wants to hang on to what it trusts. So we kind of get stuck in between the two. Doesn't work out great. We bin the new feeling and then we stick to the old. So when we're working on something technically, it's easier and better to do it in environments where we know we've got another go, where there's no consequence to that shot, where we can trust the new feeling more, get a chance to repeat that. And then obviously that then becomes a little bit more automatic out on the golf course.
That's fantastic advice for all those golfers out there. They're going to really change their game for them. So if people want to get in touch with you, Nicky, how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So my website is nickylawrensongolf.com. And then also the Women in Golf and Business website is WIGB.co.uk. And
you work with individuals and you also work with companies as well?
Yes, absolutely. So individuals and companies, organizations, businesses. So we do training programs and events for teams and businesses as well. Yes.
Great. So what is next for you? Before we wrap up, tell us what's next for you. Have you got any exciting things coming up that...
Sure. We're just about to launch a new exciting event, 3-day event next February in Dubai with Women in Golf and Business. So literally over the next week or two, we will be launching that. So we're really looking forward to that and excited about that.
Well, that's fantastic. It looks like everything is going great guns for you. I'm so grateful that you managed to make it today. I'm very appreciative. I'm very lucky to have had you on today. So thank you very much, Nicky, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Thank you.